Hello, and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager. And today, once again, I have the entire editorial team with me for the monthly wrap-up podcast. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, hello, I'm Katie Pigden, editor of Money Marketing.
I'm Michael Climbs, I'm the news editor.
Hi, I'm Lois Vallely, I'm chief reporter.
I'm Amanda Newman-Smith, I'm feature writer.
Hello, I am Omadun Snaturi, I'm a chief reporter.
I'm Jamie Andrea, one of the reporters.
Okay, fantastic. So I know that February is a short month, but it seems to have gone faster than ever. This rolled around really quickly. But let's start off by finding out what stories stood out for you that you worked on either online or in the print edition. Katie, did you want to start us off?
Well, what I might do is say that actually last month we had a bit of rivalry going on, between Momadou and Lois. So I think we'll let Lois come in with a couple of good stories, taking up the top positions.
So the top story seems to have been this one about the FCA staff vote to strike against proposed pay cuts. So this is members of or employees of the Financial Conduct Authority who are Unite members. And they voted 87% in support of industrial action against these proposed cuts to pay and conditions, which doesn't mean at the moment that there will definitely be a strike. I don't think Unite members need to sort of have a discussion with the FCA to see if they're going to do anything about it. Meanwhile, the FCA says that they've got a consultation underway, which would ensure that they provide one of the best, if not the best, employment packages of any regulator or enforcement agency in the UK. So I think they don't agree with what the members of Unite are saying. And then I know
separately, JB, you had a story about looking to recruit, was it 200 people?
Indeed, yes.
So it seems to sort of be opposite or opposed to that story. So my other story, which was number 2, I think, on the list for February so far, was about LV tying up with Lloyd's acquired Embark to use its platform to allow advisors to trade its smooth managed investment fund range. So this was interesting because it was off the back of they gave it to me exclusively because I was speaking to them separately about a future article I'm going to write about them and their sort of quest to be bought or not be bought or whatever happened, which I won't say too much about that because it's coming up, so don't want to give out too many spoilers. But because I was talking to them about that, then they wanted to talk to me about this tie-up with Embark, which I think is expected to launch in the second half of this year. And yeah, it's just quite an interesting deal, I think. Katie, I know you know more about platforms than me, so I don't know if you have anything more interesting to say about it.
Well, there seems a lot of deals obviously going on in the platform land. I think when I first joined, I sort of thought, oh, what on earth is a platform? Lois, the rest of the team probably feel the same way now. Probably you start getting your head around it a little bit more. It's obviously there to try and make advisors' lives easier, somewhere that they can manage all their clients' money. But there's been lots of ones changing hands. There's been lots of private equity coming into the market. And so when I first joined, I sort of thought, oh, platforms, this doesn't really sound like it's going to generate much news, which as the news editor at the time was obviously quite a worrying stance to be in. But I was very pleased to have been proven wrong in that regard. So actually, I think, whenever we put a platform story out, it seems to do particularly well. I think a few people have sort of said just conversations with me. This seems like a bit of an interesting tie-up with Embark at the moment. Obviously, widely, Lloyd's acquired Embark, so that also has sort of Scottish widows, and there's some tie-up there. But obviously with LV, the interesting thing is the wider story that's going on there. Was it going to be bought by Royal London? There was also talk of private equity coming in there, and at the moment it seems like business as usual. We'll just stay as we are. Thank you very much.
And Mike, what stood out for you that you worked on in February?
I think the story that stood out for me was that the FSCS expects 4 more British steel firms to fail in the coming weeks. So basically, maybe March up to Easter, and the source for that story was quite interesting as well, because it came from letters or emails exchanged between the FSCS chief executive Caroline Rainbird and the South Wales MP Nick Smith, who's been campaigning a lot for steelworkers to get redress compensation for all the money they lost from receiving bad advice from rogue advisors, so to speak. And Nick Smith was just asking Caroline Rainbird about the sort of casework, how their casework is going with British steelworkers. And an interesting revelation in that from Rainbird to Smith was that Rainbird supports the FCA creating a sort of special bespoke redress scheme to compensate British steelworkers. And the FCA has promised to launch that consultation at some point in March. So it finally looks like that British steelworkers will know sooner rather than later what sort of compensation they might get, which is an interesting development in itself, because this has been going on for years with not much movement. So finally some movement is happening, which is good for them.
Yeah, that sounds like something that you'll also be keeping an eye on. So we'll probably talk about that more soon. And Amanda, what stories did you work on that stood out for you, whether like your features or, I don't know, weekend essays?
As a feature writer, Kim, human interest stories are my thing. I love speaking to people about what they've been through, real life stories. And, with my feature on advisors who entered the industry almost against the odds, I guess that's what I've been doing. I spoke to some brilliant people and I just sat there thinking, how amazing they are, take my hat off to them. I think probably the most impressive was Louise Worrell. She's an ex-Navy officer, and she entered advice because of a disability. She was suffering with a disorder that just wasn't spotted, and she was with a military career. She wanted to join the military since she was 17 and did that, and then suddenly just found she couldn't cope with her duties anymore. And it was her mother-in-law that kind of got her onto the path of financial advice. But it's not been an easy journey for Louise. And just sort of as she was speaking, you just sort of, came to realise how lucky we are, to be able-bodied, to not feel tight, to not, feel that you just can't cope. And, I just think she's just really amazing. So it was good to speak to her, but also other people, just life situations, just, they're doing a job and something will happen. You have children and you just you can't do your job that you used to do anymore. So, one guy decided that it didn't suit him to be work for the ambulance service anymore because his wife was in the NHS, and they were just sort of two ships passing in the night. So he became an advisor, and now he can fit it around childcare and stuff. So I just thought that was really interesting as well. So I've been doing that. But the other story that I think I should probably mention as well was the one on what you should think about when leaving a network. I've been speaking to people who've come up with all these difficulties that they've had, but, really they should have sort of looked at it at the beginning when they joined the network. And that's something that people have been saying online, reading the story online. They've said, these are the things that you should think about when you start. But the reality is you don't, you're sort of all, you're excited, you're happy to be part of this network, all the great things you're going to get. You don't look at what happens if you will leave. It's,
a weird way to go into a job as well, wouldn't it, Amanda, in terms of immediately thinking, I'm only just starting, but, when I leave, this is what's going to happen.
Exactly, yeah. It's just like, to my mind, it's like, divorce. When you get married, you don't think, if I divorce, what am I going to do then? It's just something you don't think about. So, it's just interesting, advisors telling me that, runoff cover was an issue and now being left paying, indefinitely. But that was just, it's the kind of arrangement that network had, and that advisor is now with someone else that has a totally different arrangement. So I don't think advisors are necessarily aware of all the details and all the different arrangements out there. They do their due diligence. I'm not saying that, but, those little details can go unnoticed.
Also, when you're reading a contract, obviously at the beginning you might sort of try and take it all in, but I guess as the years go on, some of that might become a little bit hazy as to what exactly I signed up for or what's going to be the procedure if I do go.
Well, exactly. I mean, some advisors just, join a network with a view to it being a stepping stone to becoming directly authorised. And even people like that who know they're going to leave eventually don't necessarily know all the details. So I thought it was quite interesting, for me, because it's not something that I really knew a lot about. So it was good for me to see that as well.
Yeah, that sounds really good, Amanda. So Mamadou, what about you? What stood out for you in that you worked on in February?
Yeah, thank you, Kim. I mean, kind of like, the pension story, the pension scheme story kind of like stood out for me. Did two pension scheme stories that kind of like, had, so much, feedback from advisors and from pension savers. I mean, one was the master story that was done in January, so on the back of that, we had like follow-up. So I had, advisor that contacted me after that master story was being published. Explaining also, the kind of experience, the guy had. So we had that, story published. This month, and then the second one was also, the NHS pension scheme. That dealt with doctors and nurses. That was also from advisors. Telling kind of like current nurses and doctors who are having issues with their pension to kind of like take action before the end of next month. So those two stories kind of like we are part of it. The top 10 stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell Mamadou how you moved that Mercer story on? Because you said obviously there was the one in January and that sort of made big waves with our audience. And then you did a nice follow-up story, which actually made it into the top 3 this time of just sort of what the industry was calling on for change, really, wasn't
it? Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's true. The complaint was like, this has, this is not only, a mass issue. It's kind of like a sectoral, issue. So you're asking like that's with the pension sector. It's kind of like, overhaul, because it's broken. So kind of like it's fixing. So yeah, definitely. That was the issue that was kind of like raised, by pension savers and kind of like advisors.
Okay. And JB, what stood out for you in February?
So that's not a story that performed particularly well in terms of viewers, not in the top 10, but it was a story about the new issue of the UK green savings bonds. So the first issue was launched last autumn, and the annual rate wasn't really great, to say the least. And so they somehow improved or raised the annual rate. It's still not a great offer, but it's better than it used to be. But considering all the noise that's been before they were actually launched, I think it's a bit disappointing.
Yeah.
It's not a great investment solution, I would say.
I did just want to flag up another story, which again didn't make it into the top 10, but I thought was really interesting. And it was off the back of, so I attended SJP's Chartered Symposium, and Carla Brown, who's managing director of Oakmere Wealth Management, was there. And she was saying that paraplanning, which used to be seen as a sort of stepping stone into financial planning, has become much more sort of so that now it's seen as a profession in its own right, which I thought was quite an interesting line, and one that I hadn't really heard much about before. So I wrote a quick news story on it, and it got quite a lot of attention on both on social media and on our website, with quite a lot of people agreeing that was the case. And we put up a poll about it, and I think we had 95 voters, and 63% said yes, they deserve more money and respect. So it's just it's something that's quite interesting. And off the back of that, well, just something we need to consider anyway, is we very much like to increase how much we're talking about paraplanners and how much we're sort of speaking to them and getting them writing for us. And I think, that's just something I'd like to flag.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. I think we had someone sort of talk to us on our socials, didn't we, Kim?
Yeah.
Of saying, can we involve power planners a lot more? And yep, we're definitely open to that. We want to hear more about your perspective. Are you happy in that role, and do you just want a career as a power planner, which is great. Some obviously do use it as a way to get into advice more generally, and that's probably quite nicely where our financial advisor to be section comes in as well. So although it's got that umbrella term, we're really trying to encourage anyone into the world of advice in some way or another, whether that's some of the technology companies, whether it's platforms directly. If you're touching the world of advice, we would like to hear from people and how their journeys into it is. So yeah, certainly power planning is something we'd like to look at more.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, amazing. So now looking forward into the new month that we're moving into March, and I know the March issue will be dropping quite soon. So what can the audience look forward to in that, as well as what do you think you'll be looking into throughout March, whether that's for online content or for the print?
Just before we do that, Kim, could we actually have a little recap of what was in our February mag? Because obviously we do a lot of online, but some really good content in the February mag as well. Even if I do say so myself, the cover feature, I wrote that one, about the FNZ GBST saga, and the alphabet situation soup that we had there. Obviously, we were talking about platforms earlier. These are the sort of technology companies that sit behind those platforms, and obviously tend to create a bit of a stir with our audience as well. So probably fairly unusually, it even made it into the top 10 of our most read as well as the online version of that story. And when I started off, I thought, right, okay, I'll tell the fairy tale story of this. They thought they were going to buy the company. They thought it was all fine. In Australia, they had the approval. And over here, the Competition Markets Authority said, no, what are you doing? We need to look into this in a bit more detail. So they did, and it dragged on for a couple of years or more. And so really, as I was writing it, I soon realized, well, this fairy tale has become a bit of a saga, and lots of different people coming in and lots of different characters, and the acronyms and abbreviations just kept flowing. So lots and lots of letters flying around there, which is why we went for our nice cover feature image. But there was lots of other things in there as well. There was a nice meet from Lois. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that one?
Yes, so I briefly mentioned it in our last wrap-up podcast. I interviewed Andy Bell, the chief executive of AJ Bell. And as I said last time, he was very patient with me in explaining platforms and really making me understand what the business does. And he said that when they first launched the business back in 1995, I think it was, they didn't really have massive ambitions to grow particularly. They just wanted to do something they knew they were good at. But in their first month, they made a modest profit. And I think they've made a profit every single month since for the past 27 years. So it's actually been really successful business. And I really liked one of the quotes he said was something about, so they build very deep foundations so that when it gets a bit windy, they don't blow over. So Katie messaged me when it was that storm Eunice, was it? And said, I hope AJ Bell hasn't blown over. So I obviously had to tweet that. And I was very disappointed with the lack of response. So anyone listening to this, go and big up our Twitter. But yeah, thank you very much, Andy Bell, for being my first money marketing interviewee. It was great.
Was there anything else for anybody else in the February mag that stood out particularly? I think, Amanda, you may have discussed some of the features that you covered.
And I think I also did one about a beginner's guide to technology for the financial advisor to be page. And the reason I thought about that is, we're always talking about how technology is, the great thing for advisors now. You can't function without it. I mean, in our everyday lives, we can't function without it. But when you're new in the industry, it must just be like a nightmare thinking, I'm going to have to use this stuff and I don't even know what it is. And I keep hearing the terms banding about. And what's all this stuff? So I thought it would be sort of quite good to just sort of speak to people to find out what they're going to have to use from day one. And, is there any training available? And, what exactly are you required to do? Otherwise, it can probably be a bit of a scary prospect. So that's in there too.
Lovely. And yeah, sorry, Kim, to have hijacked that, but certainly love to talk about what people can expect in the March issue. So maybe Lois could tell us a bit more about the cover feature that we can expect.
Yes, so obviously it's International Women's Day on the 8th of March. So we wrote our cover feature all about women in financial services with a bit more of a focus on the financial advice profession specifically. And it's kind of like an extension of my leader that I wrote a couple of months ago, just about how sort of white male dominated the industry is, and how it's not just an issue of men and women. Obviously, it's just an issue of lack of diversity generally, I think. But as it's International Women's Day, I've sort of focused the cover feature more on men and women, partially because it should just be easy. I know obviously one of the arguments people say is that because there are there's more white middle-aged people in the UK, maybe it's harder to get representation in industries. But with men and women, there's a 50-50 split pretty much. In fact, I think it might be slightly more women or something. So that should be easy to get 50-50 split of women into an industry. So it's by no means something we should only be focusing on for International Women's Day, but it's, I think, a good time to sort of highlight that as a major issue. And I had a lot of very good commentators, like excellent women in the industry, writing me columns for it. So it should be a really good read, I hope.
And also there were men highlighting the fact of how it's really helped their business as well to suddenly put those viewpoints in too. Momadou, on our MM series, I think this is your first big interview.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. This is my first one. I mean, I spoke to Guardian Financial Services. Chief Executive Katia McLean, and that was fun talking to her. We spoke about the sector. And that's coming for the market issue. So I don't want to give away much of.
No. But one thing was money marketing first. Poor Momadou was having to interview walking around a park, a very, very busy park in London, on a cold winter's day. So some nice photography to look forward to as well on that.
Looking like models.
But that was very hard to do it because you have this massive park, very busy park with joggers, people kind of like taking stroll. So that was hard to talk. To kind of like get the voice and sound and everything. But we kind of work well, after, so.
Excellent. Yeah. Definitely worth a read. Amanda, any other features in the mag from you?
Yeah,
just a little snippet.
Of course, yeah. I've been looking at well-being. It's been a massive issue since lockdown, and previously I covered it in terms of vulnerable clients, their well-being. But this time I'm looking at advisor well-being. The reasoning behind that was, if you're not okay yourself, how can you look after other people? It's quite sort of basic stuff there. But it was interesting to see that things have gone beyond employee benefits now, and the focus on physical health. It's mental health as well, and certain initiatives, and just sort of simple things about being able to speak about if you've got something going on in your personal life and sharing that with your employer. How easy it is to do that these days compared to the past. So I'm looking, what advice firms are specifically doing for their staff. But that kind of led to a spin-off feature specifically on the menopause, which I think is going to appear online at some point. That's become an issue for employers just because, women are talking about it more. In my piece, I was talking about, the Countess of, sorry, I've forgotten her name now. Sorry, Sophie, but the royal family. I've forgotten her name. If anyone can help. but yeah, and Davina McCall as well, sorts of people and high profile sort of talking about it. But it's just interesting because it's something that we just used to sort of pretend that it wasn't happening and didn't really want to talk about it. I mean, how embarrassing to speak about that stuff to your male employer, but it's not now. So I'm just looking at that as well.
Fun. Any more for any more?
Yeah. No? Okay, great. Well, I look forward to everything that's going to come out in March, everything that you guys cover. And I look forward to kind of posting and looking at the engagement that we get from that. And also when the March issue drops, I hope that like the audience enjoys it and enjoys all the hard work that you guys put in on a daily basis. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys for our monthly March podcast next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.